Welcome one, welcome all. It is Tuesday, September 6th, 2022, 7:01 p.m. Central Time on the dot. We are 1 minute late. This is the Blogging the Boys Roundtable. You can watch us live on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel or listen to us after the fact on the Blogging the Boys podcast network. I say us, I say we, because there is a crew of fantastic Cowboys minds gathered around this particular nights of the Roundtable. Starting at the 12 o'clock position, we have all, by the way, people here who you can hear on the Blogging the Boys podcast network. On Mondays, you can hear the audio stylings of Tony Catalina on the First and 10 show. Tony, thank you so much for joining us. A very happy birthday to your dog, whose name is Zeke. He is 3 years old, if that is any indication as far as when Tony named the dog. We do some quick math right there. Tom Ryle in the top right corner. You hear him on Thursdays on Riled Up. Tom, thank you for gracing us with your presence. As always, you are the most handsome person in the history of Blogging the Boys, if anybody doesn't mind me saying. We have a newbie, the John Dorian, was that JD's last name, on Scrubs of BTB at this point in time. Brandon, Loree. I haven't even asked you how to pronounce your last name, Brandon. Is it Loree, in fact?
It is Loree. You did a fantastic job. I'm very proud of you.
Good for me. Thank you very much. You can hear Brandon, everybody, starting on Tuesdays on the Blogging the Boys podcast network. Not going to say the name, not going to say anything else, but starting next week, once the Dallas Cowboys are 1-0, you can hear him and a very special co-host. But thank you for joining us tonight, Brandon. And finally, of course, one of the absolute legends, not just of the Blogging the Boys world, but the blogging world as a whole. Some say he founded the internet. It is the one and only Rabblerousr, one half of the Star Seminar, which you hear on Fridays here on our podcast network. Rabble, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Tell us a fun fact about the Earth.
Fun fact about the Earth. Good Lord, I have no idea how to answer that question.
You caught me with my pants down, dude.
Adam and Eve were the first people here. That would have been that's the one we were looking for.
Well, I'll tell you what. There is we're able to trace our ancestors through mitochondrial DNA, and there is actually a mitochondrial Eve. We can trace our mitochondria back to an original first female ancestor that we all share.
That is why he is the professor of the Star Seminar. Thank you, Rabble, for that fantastic comment. All right, let's get started here tonight. First of all, Zachary Maldonado says, I need to get back into the podcast. Yes, you do. You can hear all of these fantastic voices and many others. We have 2 shows that drop every single day. That is in addition to a daily update of sorts, very similar to our links posts up at bloggingtheboys.com. We make sure you are caught up on all things Dallas Cowboys all the time, round the clock. I believe Blue 365 says, so I keep hearing the best spot for Peters is at guard. Not a bad thought. IMHO. Tony, we have a game to get into tonight, but before we do, let's kick this subject around. Jason Peters at guard, assuming Tyler Smith is the greatest left tackle to ever exist. Your thoughts?
I think we brought Jason Peters in to be a tackle, whether that is to start when he is ready or to be a swing tackle, like he mentioned. He came in there to kind of solidify and kind of give some substance to the left tackle spot. So if anybody's moving a guard because Peters is here, it's probably Tyler Smith.
Tom.
Yeah, I'm not fond of the idea of going at guard. I'm pretty sure he came in expecting and told he was going to be a tackle. And it sounds like he is not at all unhappy about the idea that he may be the swing tackle or the backup left tackle for this team, which I think is great. And it sounds like he's already doing a little coaching with the youngins out there that could possibly pay dividends down the road.
Brandon.
Yeah, he mentioned in his press conference how, he had a couple offers on the table. And I wonder if having that sort of hometown Dallas offer is what really drew him here. And like Tom mentioned, I don't think he's really upset if he doesn't get the starting left tackle position. I think that he's very comfortable with being a mentor at this stage of his career. He mentioned that last year before signing with the Bears and after signing with the Bears. And even in this offseason, he really wasn't kind of looking to get into training camp. He was kind of feeling out the different offers, and it seemed like that he was just very comfortable with doing whatever the team asks him to do. So if that's, starting in a few weeks after he gets acclimated, that would be great. But if it's just to be a swing tackle and a mentor, I think he's okay with that too.
Finally, Rabble, Jason Peters at left guard.
Absolutely not. It's a nuclear option. If that happens, the season's over. Honestly, it's not going to happen. He's here to be the tackle. If he'll be like the 4th option, they're going to try McGovern. They'll try Farniok. They'll move Tyler Smith back in. and only if those three guys can't play or are injured would they consider putting him at guard.
Rabble, I'm with you. Just to piggyback off of that briefly, today, Tuesday, Jerry said on 105.3 The Fan that their, I guess, sort of plan with Peters is contingent upon how Tyler Smith plays at left tackle. That seems like a terrible idea. I saw a friend of the show, Jeff Kavanaugh, said that this ignores how Connor McGovern plays at left guard, which should be equally important given the entire symmetry of the line. That was yours, Rabble, just in case.
That was mine. Okay.
We do award points around here, so you're starting behind the eight ball.
So I think the question for us then really is Jason Peters a better left tackle than Connor McGovern is a left guard to some degree? But I think that if he comes in and they need him to play, he's going to move to tackle, and they'll move Tyler Smith in. I don't think they're going to leave Tyler Smith at tackle and have him play guard. If Tyler Smith plays tackle, he will stay at tackle. And I mean, if he does really well at tackle, he'll stay there for the next decade. I mean, that's the plan. They've drafted him to be the tackle of the future. They've accelerated that process. If he plays well, he'll stay there until Tom and I are gone.
Wow, that was a bit ageist. Okay, Rabble said it, not me. All right, boys. Look, we're going to cover everything. This is kind of a template here that allows you to kind of go wherever you want. I told you all that we were doing predictions for the 2022 Dallas Cowboys season, but because it is a Blogging the Boys production, it, of course, has a twist. What is the twist? I have assigned each of you a particular word. They are all similar in length. You have to go through predictions. You start your sentence with the first letter of the word as you progress through it. So as an example, Tony, a happy birthday to your dog. Your word is Elliot. So you're going to go through predictions. Your first one has to be a sentence beginning with the letter E. Every whatever, eclectic whatever. You get the idea. You all have some time to think about it. Tony, your word is Elliot. Tom, your word is Dallas. You get nice simple 2 L's in there along with Tony. Tony, you also have 2 T's. Brandon, the newbie, you get Cowboys. The Y is a tricky one. So, that's always a difficult one. Rabble, I saved the best for last. Parsons, the P, always a very strong letter to begin a sentence with. Is anybody ready to jump? Tom, you have a question.
Yeah. Did you say that we have to start each sentence with the letter?
Correct. I'm not looking for a word. I don't need you to, your word is Dallas. Your first word doesn't just have to be something that a single word that starts with the letter D. It has to be a sentence, a prediction of sorts that starts with the letter D. So you got to get a little crafty. You got to get a little bit cheeky, and there are points up for grabs. Jess Navarez, who made her debut at DallasCowboys.com today. Congratulations to her from all of us. She is our reigning BTB Roundtable champion, but Brandon's never won one. Rabble's never won one. But Tony, Tom, you both have taken on some hardware before. We'll see who takes home tonight's prize. Who is ready? Again, I do award points for boldness and braveness.
Let's do it.
And one more question, just to make sure. Do we go down the line through each letter, or do we start with just the first one?
Excellent question. 5 points for Brandon. And by the way, our crowd watching can give points if they are here live. If you're here late, or listening, you're not a part of this. But yes, Brandon, you do have to go in order. So you got to start your sentence with C, next one with O, W, so on and so forth for Cowboys. So Tony, you volunteered. Your word is Elliot. Your first thing has to start with the letter E. It has to be a prediction associated with this Dallas Cowboys team. The floor is yours.
Everybody needs to relax. I think
how's that a prediction? That's not that's a statement.
I predict that everybody's going to have to relax. I think
I love it.
So ultimately, I'm nervous just like everybody else, but you kind of look at it in the way Gallimore handles things. I think what mostly everybody needs to relax about is the offensive line. I think we're all worried about what Tyler Smith is going to look like out there. But I think the way Gallimore is going to scheme this up, I think they can get the ball out quick. I think there's going to be some shotgun snaps. I think they're going to really lean on the running game. I know some people don't like to hear that, but it's going to be quick. It's going to be ground and pound a little bit, but I think everybody needs to relax because at the end of the day, the Cowboys are going to have a way to kind of move this football. I think offensively, they're going to be able to put some points on the board. It may not look like we're used to with them being a high potent offense, but I think everybody needs to relax. It's going to be efficient.
Does anybody, by the way, you can agree or disagree. We do have a duel for Rabble and Brandon that is an accessible commodity a la Mario Party. You can challenge for as many points are available. Does anybody feel like we shouldn't relax? We should be tense. We should be upset. All right. Simpatico across the board. All right, Tom, you're up next. We are going to go in this clockwise order. So, Tom, the letter D for the word Dallas.
Now, before I get into it,
that started with an N, Tom.
I want to make
not
sure
the right start.
I want to make sure I clarify. Is it just, do we have to have consecutive sentences starting with each letter, or do we just keep coming back to the word?
No, this sentence has to start with the letter D. Your next go around, that sentence has to start with the letter A, so on and so forth.
Okay. Defense is going to be one of the real keys to the team this year. Thank you for the easy word, because that was a low-hanging fruit right off the bat. I think that the offense has a lot of question marks. The only questions on defense seem to be, how are they going to get enough snaps for some of these players? There's so much depth, it seems like, on the defensive line. Interesting side note, they came out with an unofficial depth chart that had Quinton Bohanna over Neville Gallimore, which indicates to me that Quinton is going to be the guy on running downs. Gallimore is going to come in, probably get more snaps on passing downs overall. But I think that there's just so much. Micah Parsons alone moves this defense up in the rankings in the National Football League, just because he's so good at everything they ask him to do. The secondary seems to be strong. It's another interesting thing from the depth chart. They showed not only 3 starting corners, but 3 starting safeties, which I think tips the hand a little bit on what's coming out there to kind of befuddle offenses. I think we could see them lining up with 4 down linemen, 3 safeties, 3 corners, and 1 linebacker, and just tell them, okay, handle this.
Tom, I believe Blue 365, that was the comment I was searching for, started their own sentence. Its defense will be the reason we go anywhere this season if it happens. So you were copyright infringement, I suppose, right there. I gave Tom 4 points for the bravado of like bragging and being like, thanks for the low hanging fruit. So again, we do award style points. So Tom, good for you, kind of flexing right there. Anybody disagree? Anybody still think this is an offensive driven team, or do we all agree with Tom that they've kind of put all their eggs in Dan Quinn's basket? Another D option. But Brandon, go ahead.
I think Tom hit it right on the head. I think the defense is going to lead this team. I mean, we heard Dan Quinn, which is D as well. He spoke yesterday and mentioned how the most important thing for him in this system is continuity, and how they are going, which could be a word for mine. How you're going from year 1 to year 2. How important that is for communication, continuity between the players, and they really didn't lose that many pieces in the offseason from their defense. And if that, everybody stepped up. We mentioned somebody in the comments said Israel Mukuamu. I mean, he's probably going to be seeing a lot more playing time this season because he's developing, another D word. It's something that I think that Dan Quinn, that's his focus for the season, is this jump from year 1 to year 2 and how he's going to expect this big jump for his defense.
Brandon, that was a lot of, just throwing away words right there. I mean, you're burning a lot of things. I don't think anybody else has another D.
I got a D. I got a D for you. It's delusional.
Oh my gosh.
It's that the I think here's the thing. I think we look at this and say, yes, this is an offensive team, or excuse me, a defensive team. I think the team, the front office, the coaching staff, and their investment on both sides of the ball suggests that they still believe it's an offensive driven team. And so I think that is delusional. I think that we're going to find out that if they're going to be good, it's because the defense is going to have to carry them, and they're going to struggle again, much as they did in the last 6-8 games last year.
Look at Rabble taking shots. That was 7 points, by the way, for the tenacity right there. I applaud that. Great job, Rabble. By the way, Ethan brings up Sean Payton choosing his words wisely. Sean Payton did an interview with Kay Adams today and spoke glowingly of Dan Quinn twice. Did not mention Mike McCarthy or Kellen Moore. We're all playing a game here, but Sean Payton knows how to play the ultimate game. So that being said, Brandon, let's continue this game. Your word, Cowboys. You are up with the letter C.
CD Lamb. It kind of combines 2 letters. Full name. I think CD Lamb is going to be the focal point of this offense. Amari Cooper is out of the building. Cedric Wilson left in free agency, and Michael Gallup is missing possibly, definitely the first game, maybe the second, but not the first 4 because he wasn't put on the PUP list. But I do think that CeeDee Lamb is going to carry this offense. We see what Mike McCarthy was coming from with Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. I think they're going to kind of duplicate that a little bit, where it's just, I think last season and what we heard about this hype with 3 1,000-yard receivers, I think there were too many cooks in the kitchen. And I think that sort of, saturated the share for Dak Prescott to make sure he got everybody. But CeeDee Lamb had about 120 targets last season. So it's not like out of the ordinary that this is a random prediction. This is something that we've seen last season alone. So I think CeeDee Lamb is just going to absolutely take over. I'm probably estimated probably about 1,500 yards. That's what I'm guessing for CeeDee Lamb this season.
Tony, it has been said many times, why don't the Cowboys use Amari Cooper the way the Green Bay Packers used Devontae Adams, the way the Los Angeles Rams used Cooper Kupp? I mean, pick a name, pick a team. Do you feel like this lends more to that while it increases the pressure and diminishes the room for error, that this does kind of set things up? There is only one cook in the kitchen, and now you have a bunch of sous chefs following him around on the field?
Yeah, I think that's the way the Cowboys view it, right? They want CeeDee Lamb to take control and be that solidified number one guy, the no doubt about it first option. I don't know how that really helps his team in totality. I think having other guys out there that are able to kind of take the pressure off of him is better for this offense moving forward. But I absolutely do think that Jerry Jones and the powers that be see CeeDee Lamb in that same light, and there's no doubt that CeeDee Lamb has that potential. We're just gonna have to see it, and it's a lot more pressure on him than they probably should have put on him. But when Michael Gallup gets back, I think that they'll be more even. I think CeeDee Lamb might be able to see a little more breaks as long as Gallup gets out there and is healthy to do so.
All right, Rabble. First P, only P. Parsons, floor is yours.
The pass rush is going to have to take some of the heat away from what is inevitably going to be a decrease in turnovers, or this defense is not going to be better. So last year they had record turnovers, as you all know. Turnovers are inconsistent year to year, and this defense is going to have to get stops one way or the other. They got a lot of stops via turnover last year. They're going to have to get stops other ways. And the other two ways in which drives are historically stopped are in penalties and in sacks. And so they're going to have to either generate penalties through pass rush, or they're going to have to get sacks because otherwise they could be better and not be as good statistically, because those turnovers masked a lot of things that were not fully developed in this defense that might be developed this year. But boy, that covered for a lot of ills.
I think that's well said, Rabble. Obviously, we're getting ready for Cowboys-Bucks. I know the Cowboys lost last year, but that game was so much closer because Chris Godwin fumbled right near the goal line at the very end of that game that, was kind of this, random out of nowhere play. If that doesn't happen, Tampa ices that game. And we don't look at that game, and we don't look at this week as saying, well, they almost beat them last year. Justin Herbert threw a weird pick to DeMonte Kazee in the end zone 1 week later. Trayvon Diggs had the pick six, and New England kind of breathed life back into that game. So you're right. I mean, the sum of these parts are going to have to, be amassed somewhere else if they're not from the volume of turnovers. I like that one a lot. Rabble, off to not an early lead. Brandon got 5 points from the crowd, 5 points for me to start. So Brandon has the lead after one round. Tony, you're in last place. I'm very excited for this because you've got 2 L's coming up, Tony. Tom has 2 L's coming up. Tom has 2 A's, including one right up here, and Rabble has an A as well. But Tony, start us off. Give us an L. Take an L. Eat the L.
All right. L. Lawrence, as in DeMarcus Lawrence, will have
it's a
more
sentence, Tony. It has to start with a sentence.
Okay. All right, whatever. DeMarcus Lawrence is going to have, if you want bold, DeMarcus Lawrence is going to have more sacks at the end of the season than Micah Parsons.
Wow. I love that.
You really believe this, or you're just hyped up in the moment?
No, not hyped up. I think DeMarcus Lawrence somehow, some way, again, is being the forgotten man. I think everybody is wondering how they're going to use Micah Parsons, rightfully so. He's a chess piece that the Cowboys have that not many teams, if any teams at all, kind of have that same matchup. I think DeMarcus Lawrence is healthy. I think he has something to prove, and I think he's been kind of disrespected a lot. And I think we've seen that throughout the fan base. We've seen that more so through the fan base than the rest of the league. I think the other teams understand what he brings, but if you want bold predictions, I think at the end of the year, the way it shakes out, DeMarcus Lawrence might edge out Micah Parsons when it's all said and done.
To the point of, that Rabble brought up, how the volume of turnovers and takeaways is probably leaving. The Cowboys did not get a lot of games from DeMarcus Lawrence last year. They did not get a lot of games from Neville Gallimore last year. So, there is some regression of the mean happening both in a positive and negative sense. So I like that. Does anybody agree with Tony, or are we all ready to give Micah the crown a sack later for 2022?
I'm just excited to see the competition between those two, and I hope it is tight And I hope it leads to a whole bunch of sacks with a bunch of other guys out there wanting to get in on the pass rush as well to try to enter into the conversation. So I think it's all good if those two guys are looking at each other and saying, like, well, watch what I can do.
Caleb Swanson says that's a bold take. He's a monster. He's going to get his sacks, but I'd argue Parsons has a defensive player of the year season. Johnny Boy, Tony, again, it was your dog's birthday. You had some cake. Says that you had too much doggy birthday cake because that is crazy. Jess, the superstar of the day, as mentioned, congratulations once again to you, Jess. Gave you 5 points. She already gave away 5 to Brandon, though. So what does that say about you, Rabble, and you, Tom? That neither of you have gotten any points from Jess. So
it means we're old, and Jess is awarding points for handsomeness.
I did say that Tom was the most handsome person to ever be around here.
Jess disagrees.
You lied too.
Tom, the letter A is yours.
Aggression needs to be the watchword for this offense.
Oh.
With all the problems they've got on the offensive line and with all these inexperienced receivers, I think there's an expectation that that Kellen Moore may be a little cautious. They may kind of try to take it slow and rely a lot on handoff. And I think that would be a terrible mistake. Come out there, use your weapons. Get the ball out of Dak's hands fast, but to receivers that are moving and that can do something with it in space. And I think they've got some. There are players they know can do that. And there are other players that it looks like they've got that potential. And I think early on, Kellen Moore needs to start just throwing all kinds of stuff in the offense. And that does include the running game as well. Come up with some, maybe Matt Farniok becomes the new fullback guy and the super heavy set every now and then. But do that not on a short yardage situation, but get him moving out on like a sweep, trying to, let's see what happens when some defensive back sees him coming around the end, and as the lead blocker, along with, say, Steele or Tyler Smith coming around, however they do that, or a pulling guard. I want to see them. Don't get cautious. Don't pull your head in like a turtle. Go out there, take some chances, take some shots, and see if you can't get something going early and start putting the other team back on their heels.
Rabble, a cousin of this idea is this infatuation with Kevontae Turpin. And Tony, since I have said that name, you can't use that as one of your T's. And so just a heads up there. And believe me, I'm all for this. Kevontae Turpin, whether he's wearing number 9, number 16, I don't care. Involve him offensively. He has shown that he is dynamic in that sense. But I do not want Kevontae Turpin to have, if that means that Tony Pollard, Tony, you also cannot use that T for either one of your T options, is also disregarded. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want Kevontae Turpin to exist at another cost to Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard's in a contract year. We have to make sure that we get some sort of value out of Tony Pollard before he's completely gone from this team. Do you agree that Kevontae Turpin, as dynamic as he is, I mean, to Tom's point, use both, but should be behind Tony Pollard in the prioritization, the totem pole of priority, so to speak?
Absolutely. And do we know that he's dynamic in offense? We haven't really seen that yet. So we've seen him be dynamic in the open field. We've seen him be dynamic when he's got space. We haven't seen him be dynamic as a receiver. We haven't seen him. He's almost certainly going to be responsible for running a lot of underneath routes. We haven't seen him be dynamic in terms of finding seams and zones and getting that space and sort of judging those sort of subtle nuances. So, right now, I think he's got to be a gadget player. He's going to be a Lucky Whitehead type of player where he's going to run some jet sweeps. They'll do some things where they do some. They'll try to run a play in one direction and have him kind of leak out in the other direction and try to create space for him to try to create those open fields. But I think what they're really hoping for is that they can turn a couple games around with special teams plays. And I think if they can do that early in the season, what they're hoping for is that they can strike fear into the hearts of rival special teams coordinators. Who will then be more likely to try to punt out of bounds, do things to avoid him, and will generate field position as a result of that. So in some ways, the turnovers that they're not going to get and the stops they're not going to get, they're going to have to make up for. And the pick sixes that you talked about, RJ, that they're not going to get because that's not realistic, they're going to have to make up for by number 9 being dynamic.
First time ever in Dallas Cowboys history. Number 9 would be dynamic, some would say.
Oh.
Brandon, the
I
letter
like that.
O is yours. Your first of 2. I will point out that is the first letter of my last name, and I have 2 of them also. But it is your letter nonetheless.
Osa Odigizua, a couple
Yes,
of O's in
Double
there.
O. Okay.
He will lead, he will lead all defensive tackles against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with 3 sacks. I think he's going to have 3 sacks on Sunday. And I say that because the offensive line for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now is just as bad, if not worse, than the Dallas Cowboys and where we're at. You look at who they're starting at left guard and center. The left guard, Luke Gadecki, he is a rookie out of Central Michigan. I pulled up a couple, quotes from Lance Zierlein for his draft, report. His strengths is that he will fit into any run scheme, and he's an adequate anchor to survive a bull rush. But as his weakness, his spin counter, defense could haunt him throughout his start of his career. And also jumping into a new position and higher competition could slow his progress. So already at the left guard position, you're already seeing somebody who might be a little unsure because he's moving from tackle inside the guard, and he has shorter arms, so that is a better position for him at the next level. But again, a little more uncertainty. And then at center, you have Robert Hainsey, who took 31 snaps only for the Buccaneers last season. And again, a tackle from a season ago at Notre Dame, transitioned into guard, and then now is trying out center. The scouting report for him shows leverage at the point of attack, but is a below average athlete and leaves himself wide open also to spin counters. So I think Osa, with the athleticism that he brought last season, the athleticism that we saw at the very beginning of the season, it's going to show and be on display at this first game on Sunday. And I think that Osa is really going to show up, and he's one of the more athletic defensive tackles, him and Tristan Hill. So I think that Osa is going to have about 3 sacks on Sunday.
Donnie gave you 20 points, Brandon, but there is a limit. People can only give our participants 5 points at a time, but a generous offer nonetheless, but still 5 points to your cause. Anybody disagree, or does everybody agree 3 sacks for Osa on Sunday night?
I think that's a little bit rich.
Tom hates Osa Odigizua. Let the record show.
Let the record show that RJ, once again, is exaggerating to make us look bad. So I would.
Who's the most likely Cowboy to have 3 sacks then? If you had to put all your, every dollar you own, Tom, on one Cowboy to have 3 sacks Sunday night, who is it?
No, I'd go with chalk and go with Micah.
Micah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly obvious.
Well, it's clearly not Micah. Brandon just went Osa,
Yeah, but I am interested to see what happens with the interior of the defensive line, to see what happens, not just with Osa, but it's going to be interesting to see if Bohanna can get pushed. I think Gallimore is going to be really helpful on the interior pass rush. And if they're worried about Micah and D-Law and, maybe Armstrong and the others coming off the edge, that could open up some opportunities up the middle. But the reason why I think Micah might be the best bet is if they are having to worry about those linemen like that, let's blitz Micah up the A-gap and see what Tom Brady does with that.
I'm going to interrupt you, Tom, because I want to segue off of that. I'm that lame. Rabble, A is your word or letter. Obviously, you're halfway there. You're at the second letter of Parsons. So A, go for it.
All y'all need to give some credit to the front office. I think that, it's been, and I'm not just saying for this particular offseason, I think in general. I remember
this was
seeing
the genesis of your appearance here, by the way, Rabble.
Yeah. I mean, I remember reading an interview with Mark Dominic, who was the Tampa Bay general manager several years ago, like in 2006, 2007, and they had a couple good drafts in a row, and he was stressing the importance of that third good draft in a row. You need 3 solid drafts in a row to build a good young team that's on the come, and I think that's what this front office has done. I think that they've had 3 very strong drafts in a row after many years of kind of flip-flopping, alternating between good drafts and mediocre drafts. And that's something new. And I think that they recognize that. And I think that a lot of the decisions that they've made have been made to give this good young team opportunities to get better as soon as they can. So I think one of the things that we tend to do is when we think of front office, we think of Jerry. Jerry's not the general manager. He's not in the front office. But Will McClay is in the front office, and his team of scouts, who are actually really, really good, are the front office. Stephen Jones is, he's sort of attached to the front office and he works with Will. But I think that, when we think of the front office, we don't give enough credit to Will McClay and his scouts, both on the college and pro personnel sides. And we give too much credit to the Jones in terms of just decision-making power and, evaluative acumen, et cetera. This is a good young team that is on the come. And I think that they're going to be like 2 or 3 games better in the second half of the season than they are in the first half of the season, because that's what happens to good young teams.
Anybody have any thoughts? I have some, but I'll go second. Anybody have any reactionary? Tony, you smiled when Rabble began his sentence. Do you disagree?
It's not that I disagree. It's
you think what Rabble said is stupid, and you can't believe you wasted.
Look at him fomenting this.
Not at all. It's a different take this year. This offseason to hear anybody give praise to the front office or Will McClay, but the way Rabble kind of puts it together, it makes sense. And I mean, I understand the point of view he's coming from.
Rabble, Caleb Swanson says there's people that I would give kudos to in the front office, but that mainly just comes from the scouts. But the part of the front office that doesn't make the effort we would like to see for free agency. I think that's a fair point. Do you have a follow-up to that idea? And then I'll go.
Yeah, I'll say that so this free agency can happen in a couple ways. One is you re-sign your own guys, right? And when you draft really well, there's a lot you want to spend your money on re-signing your own guys and the guys who have sweat and bled for the team, and that's one of the things that the Cowboys really value. That's part A, and part B is, we've talked for years about progress stoppers and not wanting to bring in progress stoppers. And so when you have a good young team, what you really want to do is give them every opportunity to take meaningful snaps, and that might mean that they'll take their lumps. But it also might mean that you wait as long as possible to bring in a veteran. So, I think the Jason Peters thing is a great example. One could argue that they never would have done it if Tyron Smith hadn't got hurt, but I think that they probably would have brought in some sort of veteran swing tackle about this time either way. But they wanted to spend as much of the offseason as possible giving their talented young and talented to something that we can debate. But they like them. They drafted them for a reason. They're talented young offensive linemen, every opportunity to get as many meaningful snaps as possible. And then they bring somebody in. And so we disagree with the timing, but I think that if we think about the decisions they've made in the light of we have a good young team and we want to give them as many opportunities to get better quickly, then I think we can understand a little bit more the way they've operated this offseason.
By the way, Brian wants you to have 2 points for using y'all. Shout out to you, Rabble. Respect. I will say I think you meant it the way I interpreted it. I think that we sometimes give Will McClay too much credit. I think that, and I don't mean to, bash Will McClay by any means. I think he's the most competent member of this front office. And I don't mean that in an insulting way. But I think we tend to assign all of the negative results specifically to the Joneses and all of the positive results only to Will McClay. And I don't think that's fair. You mentioned their draft, and I think it's too early to judge any of the drafts in the Mike McCarthy era, but we're sitting here, opening night 5 days away from now. And last year's second and third round picks are players who we can't trust in Kelvin Joseph and Nahshon Wright. And so, I mean, are we crediting that draft? Yes, they drafted Micah Parsons. Yes, they found Osa Digizua, who Brandon shouted out. They found Simi Fehoko, who we are hoping is a reliable piece. But I do think that overall, and I don't believe, I'm with you, Rabble, Jerry Jones isn't spearheading every decision, but I do believe that the way he speaks is emblematic for the overall disposition of the team. Everybody made a big deal about his quote today on The Fan, where he said that he cannot believe, or he cannot live in a world where 1 and 1 is 2. He has to believe that 1 and 1 is 3. He said earlier this year at the beginning of training camp that one of his flaws is that he doesn't acknowledge negative results in his life. Pain is a learning tool. Rabble, you know that. You're one of the smartest people I've ever known. You can learn from negative experiences, and the Cowboys don't seem to do that. You mentioned the timing. I cannot justify the timing behind the Jason Peters thing. Fine, you want to believe in Jason Peters and Josh Ball and Matt Waletzko? Fine, but hedge your bet. There was no reason not to do that. But you want to believe in that? You want to take it the distance? Fine. Tyron gets hurt. We're sitting here saying, well, Jason Peters is going to take a couple of weeks to get ready. It's been 2 weeks since Tyron got hurt. What if you'd made that phone call the Thursday morning that First Take was out at the Star in Frisco? You'd be getting ready to play the Buccaneers without having to put Tyler Smith out at left tackle. So I do think there is this often gets painted as all or not. They're either all terrible, all great, no terrible, no great. It's obviously somewhere in the middle, but I do think in general they are much more reactionary than they are proactive, and I think that's their ultimate Achilles heel, that they try to live in that world where they can get 3 out of 1 and 1.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they really feel strongly that they've been proactive in the past and it hasn't worked. And
Sure.
so they feel
But
like
then that's where they do live all or not.
successful.
They say, well, that didn't work. We can never do that again. So now we have to go,
Mm-hmm.
operate the other way completely and totally. Well, no, you can. It's never, the recipe is never the same. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. So I think that's the other thing that we as Cowboy fans get wrong is we look at, oh my God, it's been 26 years. And actually 26 years can be subdivided into a lot of different
Sure, totally agree.
philosophies, a lot of different ways of proceeding. And so like this front office for 26, it's actually a completely different front office, completely different philosophies over the many years. So I would say that the Will McClay era, to go back to your earlier point, RJ, the Will McClay era, which basically starts around 2014, has been pretty consistent. We can disagree about the philosophy, but the philosophy has been consistent. Like they know what they believe in and they pursue it. And you're right that Will McClay is not infallible, and that there are certainly draftees where we're not sure whether they're going to quote unquote pan out. But I think there's been enough hits that this team to me is deeper and clearer about the roles for players, let's say 35 to 53 under the Mike McCarthy era than they ever were in the Jason Garrett era. I think McCarthy and his staff, both by getting the heck out of the way, where the Jason Garrett staff didn't, but also I think by articulating more clearly what they want in terms of roles for guys who are like low second and third team, have actually assembled a roster where there's guys at the bottom of the roster who are more capable of making a contribution.
I think that's fair. Although I would argue the Jason Garrett era ended in a purely reactionary way, which is in and of itself emblematic of, but again, like it's not all one thing. It's not, it's a collection of things, a collection of mistakes, a collection of successes. Okay. By the way, Rabble Cam says to give you the game that your viewpoint is spot on. So there's not a real point value associated with that.
Cam, you and I are going to be friends forever.
Jess says 5 points for you. Tom, you are now the only person who Jess has not given 5 points to. So I would advise taking that personally. But hey, it is what it is. Okay, let's blitz through the next two letters for each of you. Tony, the second L in your name for Elliot. Go for it.
Less turnovers, more effective. And I'm speaking about the defense. I think ultimately they're going to regress when it comes to the turnovers. I mean, last year they had 34 turnovers. They're definitely going to be on the south side of that. But they scored 358 points on the defense. I think ultimately they're going to be more efficient. I think that the second year in Dan Quinn's system, the defense is going to be a little bit more on point. I think that they're going to be able to kind of stuff offenses out, a little more 3 and outs. I think they're going to be able to be a little tougher on the defensive side. And that's kind of like we mentioned earlier. This is what that defense or this team is, the identity is going to be. They think the offense is the identity, but we really know the defense is going to have to carry this team. So ultimately less turnovers, but more effective defense this year.
Two things. One, Tom, Jess would like you to know she did give you points. So Rabble, you were actually last in Jess's priority list. Just so we're clear. Ethan says, I think we'll have near the same turnovers. Does anybody agree with that? Or does anybody think we're looking at a dramatic dip? Brandon?
I probably not the same amount because it really was just pretty historic, but I would say why not? Dan Quinn was again talking in his press conference about.
You got a W coming up right now, Brandon. Be careful.
I have another one. Don't worry. It is continuity. It's the same pieces that are in place. If not, people have been elevated to that position. People are taking like DeMonte KZ and I forget the other guy's name. That's how forgettable. The linebacker who they had, who was from Atlanta.
Curse.
Yeah.
Keanu Neal.
I'm not Curse. Keanu Neal.
Yes. So, I mean, those were pieces that were brought over from Dan Quinn's system in Atlanta, and they were great stopgaps, but you could see the people who took over. Jabril Cox is starting this season. Is Israel Mukuamu is taking a leap. So I think that they feel comfortable in the pieces that they have. And you see someone like Carlos Watkins, who started 14 games for them last season, is on the practice squad. So I think that, yes, they might not have the same amount, but I wouldn't bet against having pretty close to the near top of what they were last season.
I hope that they are at the very least just as opportunistic. They don't have to be as many in volume, but if they're timed properly, obviously that's what matters the most. Tom, you are up. We have a run on L's. Your first one, excuse me.
Luck plays an awful big part in that whole turnover equation.
Goodness.
And
wow.
that is something though that it's not totally outside of the team's ability to create some of their own luck. And I think we saw a lot of that last year. They were just in the right place at the right time. And if the ball's going to make a funny bounce, it doesn't do you any good unless you're there to pounce on it. If it's going to take a funny rebound off of a receiver, you have to get under it and haul it in. And we saw some of that. And I'm hoping that this year they can continue to capitalize on that by being aggressive, going at it. I mean, Dan Quinn says they're going to basically go out there with their hair on fire at getting after the other team. And I think that's what they need, because I think when you play faster and harder like that on defense, you tend to make that luck happen for yourself.
Brandon, let's get to your W.
Winning 1-point games will be a lot more successful for Dallas this season. I think that last year, whether Greg Zuerlein, missed them, I don't want to say on purpose, but, the first game was just so crazy. And I think that you're not going to see that. I have confidence in Brett Maher coming back the second time. I think that, again, having faith in the front office, you're not going to make this move if you feel totally 100% confident in your decision. Jonathan Garibay, unfortunately, didn't work out, but I do think that, winning these 1-point games are not going to be like what it was last season. Whether they might lose by a little bit more than 1 point, but they also might win by a lot more than 1 point. So I don't think we're going to see that, difference this season.
Tony, a big reason why people believed in the 2020 Cowboys was regression to the mean in that sense. I think they were 2-7 in one possession games in 2019. So there were so many people high on the Cowboys, again, that kind of blew up in their faces when Dak got hurt. Do you agree? Do you think that Dallas is able to handle the stresses of those close matches, in a positive way?
Yeah, I think, like I said, with the defense, I'm fairly confident this defense is going to be a top tier unit in the NFL, and a lot of that comes into my confidence in the quarterback. I think Dak Prescott is made for these moments. I think he is a guy that you can go to battle with, and you feel confident with that. So as long as you have a tough, stout defense and a quarterback that is top tier, in my opinion, a top 10 quarterback, then you feel confident in these close score matchups.
Rabble, Brandon had the only W of this exercise. You now have the only R. So make it memorable. My first name starts with an R, just so we're all aware.
Regression to the mean is a B. So we've talked a lot about
respect on understanding it's a family show. It wouldn't hurt people to remember that, like Rabble, every now and then. So go ahead.
There you go. So we've talked about the fact that the turnovers were historically high, and there's almost certain to be a regression to the mean. Tom just talked about how luck is such a kind of integral part of turnovers. And that, yes, I think there's some defenses who put a lot of pressure on quarterbacks and can sort of create their own luck. They create the conditions for that. But like he said, sometimes the ball's a weird oblong ball. Sometimes it bounces in your direction. Sometimes it doesn't. I think one of the exceptions there may be Trevon Diggs, because he just seems to create his own. Regardless, it doesn't seem like many of his turnovers, other than that one early on against Tampa Bay where it kind of bounced off of was it Fournette into his arms, was luck based. Right. Most of the other ones were ones where he just played the man and then played the ball. But I think in general, regression to the mean in that regard, regression to the mean in terms of offensive turnovers. Turnover differential is one of the greatest determinants in terms of wins and losses. And so they had I think a deceptive record because their turnover differential was so high. And so it's likely not to be anywhere near that high again. I also think that it helped mask some of their kind of offensive woes as well. And so it was you were just talking about their record in close games, right? They were 3-2 in games decided by 7 points or less last year. And so I've talked a lot in the past about good teams don't win close games, because the truth of the matter is, if you look at the NFL historically, good teams, Super Bowl teams, tend to be about 500 in close games, because luck is, as Tom said, such a huge factor. Good teams avoid close games, right? So they only played 5 close games last year. That's one of the reasons they were a good team, is because they got out to big leads and they avoided close games where Lady Luck can come in and affect the outcome. So another place where they're likely to regress to the mean is that they're going to play more close games. And so that means that they're probably going to lose more close games, because that's the way it works historically. They could get lucky and go 6-1 in close games, right? It's possible, but the statistical likelihood is that they'll play more close games and they will be closer to 500 in those close games. And so therefore, ergo, they will lose more games in that particular category. That's another kind of nasty place where they're likely to regress to the mean.
Yeah, that's why, people would be like, oh, so-and-so has the most fourth quarter comebacks in the NFL since, like, who cares? Like, why is he having to come back in the fourth quarter? That's the question that
Troy
Rabble.
Aikman never had to come back.
Exactly. Rabble, go off. Tony, there is no I in team, but there is an Elliott, the only I of our show. Go for it.
Individual statistics for Trayvon Diggs and Micah Parsons will go down, but I think their overall impact will be much better. I think ultimately Trayvon Diggs is going to be coming into his third year as a much better, more complete cornerback, somebody that if you want to go ahead and try him, go ahead and try him. I think he's going to make you pay for that, but ultimately I think teams are smarter than the fan bases that follow them. I think Micah Parsons said it himself, and even Mike McCarthy touched on it. Micah Parsons' numbers don't have to be historical for him to have that type of impact on this team. They're going to use him as a queen on the chessboard. He's going to be all over the place. They're going to use him in a variety of different ways, and he's going to be a nightmare for quarterbacks and offensive coordinators. So individual statistics, don't be surprised if they're a little lower this year, but you'll definitely feel a more bigger impact from Trayvon Diggs and Micah Parsons.
Tony, do you even play chess?
I watched Queen's Gambit.
I was going to ask if Micah's the queen on the board, what does that make Trayvon?
To the fan base, a pawn.
That was actually a really good answer. I wasn't expecting you to be able to pull that off. Tom, we're going to skip you because you actually have one fewer letter than everybody else. So we just got to keep things, kind of in symmetry. Brandon, you are up next with the letter B.
Beat up on the division. That's what I have to say. I think that's where it starts for the Cowboys. I mean, the Eagles are getting this insane amount of hype that I don't think has ever been, I don't remember the Eagles ever being talked about this way, even during their, pre-Super Bowl run, a couple of years ago. So I think that when you beat up on the division, it makes things a lot easier to not only get to the playoffs because you end up winning the NFC East, but I think it also opens up the possibility where if you have a couple, games where you can't perform as well, like again, they're playing top level competition the first 2 weeks of the season like they did last year. Nobody really knew what the Chargers were, but the Chargers are an up and coming team. So you look at Bucks, Chargers last year. Now you have Bucks, Bengals. I think, back to back, if you can beat up on your division, especially later in the year, it kind of creates a little bit more of a cushion for if you do lose to a team like the Bengals and Bucks early on in the season.
Yeah, stockpile those wins. Tom, you didn't get to go through a letter, but I mean, those are the 6 easiest games on the Cowboys schedule in all likelihood, or 4 at least. I'm not counting the Philly matchups. If you do put some stock into that, they do get Chicago, Detroit, get the AFC South. So you got to put all those together. And then to Brandon's point, the losses against the Packers or the Vikings or the Bengals or the Rams, they hurt a lot less.
Yeah. The thing is, though, right now, we're just basically looking backwards at everything, at what the teams were last year. We don't really know who these teams are this year.
The whole subject of this is predictions, Tom. What do you mean we're looking backwards? The whole point of this is looking forward.
Yeah, but when you're talking about the strength of schedule issue, that's all a backwards looking thing. We'll know a lot more about what's coming down the pike after we've seen how these teams roll out the first 3 weeks. But I do think that they're in better shape in the division than a lot of people seem to think they are. And that just comes down to the fact that I think the difference between Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts is pretty dang big. And I think that will make a real difference. And it's going to have the Cowboys at the least in a dogfight to the very end for the division. I still think they're going to pull it out and win it. I don't know if that's going to be that meaningful, given the fact that the NFC East still looks like kind of a weak division because of the Giants and the Commanders, who have an even worse situation at quarterback. But, I just want to see a little bit more of what's coming down before we start talking about which is an easy game and which is a hard game. And there's always those injuries that come up, knock on wood. It's not going to happen to the Cowboys, but some team down the road is going to suddenly look very different because somebody is no longer available or a few key players go down.
Well said. Okay, Rabble, there are 4 S's left. You have 2 of them, and this is the first one.
Safety play is going to be as good as it's been since 2003.
Wow.
So it's 2003 for you youngsters. You may remember was the year that there was Darren Woodson's
the iPhone debuted
year, and he teamed up with a young Roy Williams before Roy Williams' career kind of went off the edge. And they were unbelievable. They were dynamic. They brushed the passer. They covered all over the field. And I think that there's a collection of safeties now that are matchup nightmares for people. And they're suddenly, after years of us complaining about how the Cowboys never address safety, suddenly have a really strong and really deep safety room with a bunch of guys who can make plays and affect outcomes at all three levels.
Brandon, I feel like the safety position has flourished, but it does feel like the Avengers meme, like at what cost, like everything, like it kind of feels that way in some sense. Do you agree that a lot was spared, not in the name of improving at safety, but that it all happened kind of in parallel with one another?
Yeah, I mean, he stole my S. I was going to end with that because I feel so strongly about the safety position. But, I look at Jerry Jones has talked up Malik Hooker like he's the second coming of a Roy Williams this offseason. I do think there is potential for it. I mean, he's coming off another year since his injury, and I do think that the safety position is the strongest of since it's been in many, many years. J-Ron Kearse was I don't even know what to say. He was totally underappreciated at the end of last season. Got snubbed from the Pro Bowl. I think J-Ron Kearse, was a all over the place hybrid safety linebacker that was used, and I think he had almost over 100 tackles last season. Over 101 tackles. So I do think the safety position, they have improved it, but I think it is based off of luck and all the pieces kind of coming together at the same time. I feel like Donovan Wilson has been here for 9 years and still makes $1 million. Unfortunately, he hasn't gotten out of his contract yet and made his money, but he's a factor. Dan Quinn talked about him as somebody he was really looking forward to being used in his scheme this year. So I think even Donovan Wilson is somebody that we aren't talking about as much, but he will be used as almost like that thumper enforcer.
Okay, so I want to save time for each of your final letters to make a final plea. So we are actually, that was a horrible blitzing through this last letter. We're going to literally blitz through the next two letters. I just want I want one word. We're changing the rules mid-game. Tony, the letter O, one word.
Overreaction.
Okay, we need more words. Like, what are we overreacting to at this point?
I think the whole off season. I think we're so ready to be.
That could have been the one. That could have been the off season. By the way, just
Fair enough. Okay. Yeah. So I think overall we overreacted a little bit to the off season. I think that there are some question marks on this team, but I think overall they're going to scheme up and they'll be fine. I don't think they'll be prolific, but I think they'll be fine.
Okay, Tom, your second L. One word. I don't know. Is that my internet or Tom's?
Tom's.
That's anticlimactic. Tom, we're gonna wait here, see if that works. Oh my gosh, I was so into it. Tom, are you back?
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you. You guys are streaming clear to me. So
okay, your second L word.
Okay, I was saying that Leighton Vander Esch, his performance is probably more important to this team than a lot of people realize, because if he's the good Leighton that they were seeing in camp, he is going to really be an anchor for this team. If he's the bad Leighton we've seen from the past couple of years, that's a problem they're going to have to address, and they may have to call on Jabril Cox to step up and try to plug the hole.
Okay.
Brandon, your second O.
On the road in December is a lot easier than it's been in the past. You see the last stretch of their schedule, they are at home at Houston, at Jacksonville, at home versus Philadelphia, at Tennessee, at Washington. So they're playing, really Washington will probably be the coldest place. Sometimes in Tennessee it gets a little cold, but you never know. It's definitely not as cold as what it could be in Green Bay and Chicago. So I think on the road in December has been very favorable for them in their schedule this season.
Yeah, lots of that Tennessee. I mean, you could argue that Washington game may be inconsequential. Their most, kind of consequential game in the climate could be Tennessee. Good answer there. Rabble, your only O.
I hate that this is my O, but offensive line. It's the thing they're gonna go as far as that offensive line goes. It's that simple.
I mean, I don't know anybody who disagrees with you in reality. I mean, how far right now today? Cowboys have the what best offensive line in the NFL? Are they average? Like if you had to cut them put them in a tier.
I think so. I think they're league average. I mean, they do have some good players. I mean, we're forgetting that they have probably the best offensive lineman in the league at right guard. I actually really like their right tackle. I know that some people really don't like him. I think actually last year their run game was a lot better, particularly because they could open up the entire play sheet when he was playing. And I think their center is serviceable. I think he's fine. I think he does a pretty good job of making calls, and he's in sync with the quarterback for the most part in that regard. So we'll see about the left side. I mean, the reality is we also overrate Tyron Smith. Tyron Smith's been a declining player for a while now. He's still a beast, but there's also times he's not. I mean, he was hobbling and making do, and I think even before he got injured, I think there were people who were watching closely, saying, I don't know, this dude seems awfully stiff. So I don't actually know that a young Tyler Smith is going to be a drop off from a Hall of Fame level player. But by the end of the season, is week 17 Tyler Smith really going to be that much of a drop off from week 17 beat up old Tyron Smith? Right? I mean, you've got guys who are on
kind of a
different
negative thing that made me
trajectories
feel
in
positive.
terms of their growth and decline.
Okay. Big shocker here. I've changed the rules one last time. So in the sake, because this last one has to be epic. We can't just go into this, with 3 S's. We can't have that. I mean, that would be stupid. And so we're not here to do that. So that being the case, Tom, let me fix yours right here. I'm going to buy you all some time after I explain this to think. You're all going to take the final 2 letters of your word and make one big sentence, one combo sentence involving words that begin with those 2 letters. Tony, that means you have to use 2 words that both involve the letter T. Neither can be Tony, neither can be Turpin. That was your stipulation from a few rounds ago. Tom, your letters are A and S. Once again, a family show. Be cool around here. Brandon, yours are Y and S. Rabble, you are N and S. So Brandon and Rabble have 2 consonants. Tom, you are fortunate enough to have a vowel. So while the guys think, I said I was going to buy them some time, an update on where we are at from a points perspective. This is certainly pertinent to the crowd watching with us live. Ethan says epic, so I do feel like people are enjoying this twist. Last place at the moment, we have a tie between Tony and Tom. 2 T's. You can't use that, as mentioned, Tony. You and Tom both have 28 points, but it is a very, very close competition. Rabble, you have 29 points. Brandon, you are in the lead with 30 points, and this should come as no surprise given the theme of the final round. All points are worth double. So that being the case, we're going to go in the same order. Tony, do you feel like I have bought you enough time to put together your double T?
I think so. Let's see here.
By the way, Brian says that you are always in last place and that I am biased. Do you agree with that?
I'm just kidding.
You know what?
No,
Tony now has 29 points. You are no longer in last place. So
thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. I appreciate that, Brian. By Thanksgiving time, the Cowboys will be on the verge of sewing up the NFC East. I think the Eagles are way overrated. I think we've heard this whole dream team conversation before. I think that they still have Jalen Hurts, and that has to count for something. I know RJ kind of got not misquoted, but a little bit, and said that you thought Jalen was the worst in the division quarterback wise, but he's ultimately he's in the bunch of just some meh quarterbacks in that division. Dak Prescott's head and shoulders. I think ultimately the Eagles are drinking their own Kool-Aid more than anything else, and I think by Thanksgiving time the Cowboys could be about a game or 2 away from wrapping this division up, regardless how we feel about it.
So Tony, it took until mid-December last year for the Cowboys to wrap up the NFC East. So you're talking about, almost a full month before. There are generally no divisions wrapped up by Thanksgiving. So you're talking about kind of a historical gap between the Cowboys and the field here. First of all, I respect the alliteration. You're the only person who had that challenge. And I respect the creativity here, but you really feel that confident, or you were just kind of backed up in a corner? You can tell us.
It's a bold take, but I think ultimately the Cowboys are the class of the NFC East. I believe Brandon hit on that, and I think Rabble did too. They're definitely the class of the NFC East, and all it takes is for the Cowboys to win a couple of these close games we're talking about, and for the Eagles to not get off as hot of a start or to be as good as they think they are. So it may be a little bit of a stretch there, but I wouldn't say we're too far in December before we're having that conversation.
All right, Tom, AS, make it great.
Actually, I'm very intrigued by the practice squad that they have this year and how they're looking to use it. As we all know, they are going to carry their backup quarterback and their kicker on the practice squad for up to 3 weeks and call them up each week to buy themselves some time to keep some of the younger players on the roster so they can fully develop them. But beyond that, this is an awfully good-looking practice squad. As you mentioned, as was mentioned earlier, Carlos Watkins is on the squad. I think that if the Cowboys need to pull somebody up, there is a decent option at almost every position still on the practice squad that can come up and probably play at a pretty good level. So that is an extra level of depth that I don't think we've seen for a while with this team.
So the words were actually in squad, just to be clear, because I think
Yes.
okay, so that was a little bit less obvious than Tony's, but we had to make sure we connected those dots.
Yes.
We will see how long the Cowboys play the 55-man roster game, whether they kind of restart the cycle with 2 different players after the first 3 weeks of the season. That would seemingly be as expected. They could probably use Jake McQuaid that way, CJ Goodwin that way. These kind of, down the roster veterans, they're 54th and 55th players in that sense. But so, hey, by the way, Tony, the comment section is really in your favor right now. The commenters are really coming to bat for you. So who knows? We still have 2 players to get through. Brandon, you are up and you have YS, a challenging combination of letters.
Youth stands strong. I think.
Wow.
Well done.
Oh
well
my gosh.
done. I give him a point.
Oh man, I appreciate that. The youth of this team, the Cowboys are now one of the youngest teams in the NFL, and some people might say it's inexperience, but I think it creates tenacity. I think that these guys have something to prove. Dak Prescott came out this week and mentioned how, he understands that the writers were writing all these things about the team. He's like, we get it. We hear it. We understand what you guys are saying. And I think that creates fuel for these guys. And I don't remember one of the most recent off seasons where the Cowboys weren't talked about less. I think that everybody just assumes that they're taking a step back, but why not a step forward because of their youth? And I think that creates such a longevity of sustainability for the team moving forward in the years. And yeah, they have a couple guys on these 2-year deals that Dallas always does, but they're drafting really, really well, which is what we talked about earlier. So I think that creates a lot of sustainability. And I think that they're relying on their youth for the first time in a really long time.
That is, Peter King's Football Morning in America yesterday on Monday. This thing had to have been, 8,000 words. Like one of the biggest Football Morning in Americas of the year. It's the Monday of the regular season. Not a mention of the Cowboys. No serious, which is really kind of crazy. To your point, Brandon, you could argue maybe they're lurking in the shadows. That was well done. You got a lot of love in the chat as well. Rabble, I won't lie to you. We need an impressive performance if you want to come in and take this thing home. NS
9-6 will be the final score of the Cowboys-Bucks game.
I love that answer. That's a great answer.
So we've talked about the problems on the Cowboys offensive line. We talked about the problems on Tampa Bay's offensive line. We also highlighted the young Turks that they've got at defensive tackle, which with safety is probably the most improved position in Dallas over the last couple of years. It's a lot of, Brandon, you highlighted Odigizua, but we also mentioned Tristan Hill. Before we had to combine them, my end was going to be Neville Gallimore. I think he's going to have a breakout year. I think he's going to have a borderline Pro Bowl year. I think he's poised to have a beast, sort of beast mode kind of year. Chauncey Goldson is going to be, I think, going to make some hay inside as well. So I think both teams are really going to struggle to move the ball, and I think it's also important that we look at the season in a new way, thanks to the sort of the new bargaining agreement, which is that the September games are really the preseason, right? So both teams are in preseason mode. Like the regular season starts in October. So there are now 4 preseason games. The preseason games we've been seeing are training camp practices, right? So everything basically gets moved forward. So there's a 13-game season. We now have 4 preseason games. They just happen to count. So we're going to see preseason football for the next 4 weeks. So if we think about preseason football and we think about 2 offensive lines that are overmatched, I think we start thinking about games that are basically a battle of field goal kickers.
That was really well done, Rabble. If I'm being honest with you, I awarded you 9 and 6 points appropriately for that. You came in, Rabble, in 3rd place. 1 point
brutal.
Separated you.
I was 1 point down. You gave me all these points. I ended up in 3rd.
1 point separated you from 4th.
The fickle masses.
So Rabble, you had 44 points in 3rd place, and again, 1 point positively ahead of Tom, who came in last with 43 points. Tom, a great job. But Tom, it was your 1 point that you handed out to Brandon that served as the winner. Brandon, 50 points to Tony's 49.
Wow.
Shout out to Tom Ra, who casted the deciding vote. Brandon shows up, has 100% winning rate in Blogging the Boys Roundtable appearances. Brandon, congratulations. What do you have to say? Who do you have to thank? Just go off.
Well, I guess I have to thank Tom first and foremost, but really, I want to thank all you guys. You guys have brought me into this crew, to this community. The community's been great for fans, and the whole network's been great. I mean, we have a great group of writers here, and I'm really looking forward to see. Listen, maybe we bring the juice, and it translates to the Cowboys win record. We could take all the credit for it. I'm all in for that. So I'm really looking forward to the season, and have to thank the crew here.
Tony, how do you feel?
Richie deserved, dude.
That's right. Are you upset with Tom? Tony, again, had he thrown that 1 point in your favor, you never know.
Yeah, Tom, man, we've been teammates for a while now, but I'm not upset. You throw the rookie a point and he wins. Maybe he's having a Micah Parsons type impact of Blogging the Boys here.
Tom, do you feel guilty? I mean, how are you compartmentalizing all of this? You actually weren't even supposed to be here tonight, so you have really butterfly affected this whole thing.
No, I don't feel guilty. It's like, as you like to say, it's all in fun. And if we can't sit back and enjoy this, what's the point? We're here to not only inform, but we're here to entertain the people that tune in, if you want to call it, to listen to us do this and watch what's going on. And I just hope that we brought them a little enjoyment and fun, and maybe told them a couple things they hadn't thought about. And if we manage to accomplish that, then hopefully we can get people to come back, because these can be a lot of fun, and we've got a lot more of it coming this season. So stay tuned, all of you.
Rabble offered a score prediction for Sunday night's Cowboys-Bucks game, a bit tongue-in-cheek. I will offer him a chance to add a real one if he would like, and we'll go around the horn as we close. Tony, Cowboys-Bucks, Sunday night, score, who wins?
I'm on record at First and 10 podcast. I said I think the Cowboys win differently this year. I think they win 20-17 this week. Start the season 1-0.
Okay. Are those all 100% like Brandon field goals? No misses from Brett Maher here? We're not leaving points on the field?
You know what? I think he does miss one. I think give me one miss, and it wouldn't be right if he didn't. So
wow.
2017, Brett Maher, they still get it done.
Tom.
I'm going with 23-16, because I do think that the field goal kickers are going to be relied on as the teams are still getting their legs under them on the field. But I think the Cowboys can pull this out, and the main reason I say that is because the one thing that will slow Tom Brady down is if you're in his face a lot, and I think they are going to be right on his face mask all game long.
Tom Brady's 6-0.
Not contacting it.
He is 6-0 against the Cowboys. Maybe this is the
Time
one. Brandon,
to break it.
Score prediction. Kevin says 28-9 Tampa in the chat. So,
wow. I don't know about that. I'm going to say 21-17 Dallas. I think that this is a new team. I think the Bucs are not the same team coming off the Super Bowl last season. I think Dallas, again, having this sort of underdog mentality, or like DeMarcus Lawrence said, he said underdog, upper dog, whatever you want. The dogs are going to eat. And I think that, we're probably going to have, I think my prediction is a defensive touchdown somehow, some way. I think whether it's a strip sack or a pick six, I think they're going to have a defensive touchdown.
Rabble, you want to stick with 9 and 6 or?
It's something close to that. I'll say that styles make fights, and I think the Cowboys, particularly with Anthony Barr and Micah Parsons, are well suited to be able to get in Tom Brady's face. I think they're going to take advantage of that, and those two guys are going to be doing a lot of Troy Polamalu stuff and disguising things and coming from all angles. And I think it's going to Tom Brady's going to have pissed off Tom Brady face at some point during the game. But I still think the Cowboys are going to struggle to move the ball because that offense hasn't played together. And so let's say 13-9 Cowboys.
I think it's week 1. There's always something weird. I think we get a missed extra point or something. look, no, all respect to you guys, but 21-17, 10-7, 14-7. Come on, let's get some, some funny numbers. I'm going to say 29-13. Let's just do it. Let's send this. Let's light this candle. You know what I mean?
Who scores 29?
I feel like that was really obvious with like the positive energy that I sort of said that with.
That's a lot of points. That's
I know.
Lot of points.
Have you seen Dak Prescott play football and CeeDee Lamb? I mean, like I will say 29. What did I say? 29-13. Tony Pollard has 2 touchdowns. That's my my kind of bold-ish take. We see him unleashed, and we are like barrel chugging the Kool-Aid next week that the Cowboys have unlocked him. We're starting to talk about how they have to re-sign him, get it done, all sorts of stuff.
Hey, a shout out to Johnny Boy RN, because he says that Turpin's going to run one back, and I don't think that's a bad prediction at all.
Tony, would you have used Turpin or Tony Pollard in your double T's?
I probably would have, honestly.
Okay, Tony. Well, send us home. Brandon's never heard this live. Tony, yes, I need you to. You really failed last week. Everybody encourage Tony in the chat. Make a random noise that lasts at least 3 seconds. All right. It can't be like a singular sound. It has to be a combination of echoes, melodies, movements, notes. Tony, you can do this.
Yeah.
That was better.
Bravo.